אשכחך ירושלים תשכח ימיני תשכח ימיני תדבק לשוני לחיקי לא אזכרני אם לא אעלה את ירושלים על ראש שמחתי. If I forget you, Jerusalem, may my strong hand lose its ability to function and to communicate. May my ability to speak of you disappear if I forget who you are, if I do not raise you up in joy. These words arise from Psalm 137, the sole liturgical piece in this corpus of 150 psalms set in a particular place and time, the Babylonian exile. If I forget you, city of peace, city of wholeness, if I lose my ability to access this very delicate strand like a spider's web that connects us, I will no longer be someone who can exist in exile, someone who can live in far-off lands and remain connected to the narrative of a people I call my own. The psalmist wonders aloud how to navigate the alienation that comes from remembering a beloved place that anchored our experience and world from far away. The words aim to keep us connected and invested because we know what it is like to build up anew. Galut, exile, may mean forced separation. Yet for most of us, not for you, but for most of us, the physical distance of living here is chosen as we nurture and build exquisite and many-layered lives wherever we reside. The deeper question of spiritual connection to a place with whom we might not always agree, or with whom we will support at all costs, remains. Just as we here search not only for meaning in life, but for the feeling of being alive and connected to Judaism of all directions, culturally, intellectually, historically, and spiritually, so too do our siblings in Israel search for this same spiritual aliveness. On this Yom Kippur, I invite us to think about what we might learn from Eretz Yisrael right now, as Israelis search for spiritual meaning and strive to connect just as deeply with those words of Im Eshkachech Yerushalayim, not from abroad and afar, but from within the Jewish homeland as well. In two are better than one, the great structure of Israeli Judaism. Rabbi Dr. Ronnie Yeager writes, "The uniting of Judaism and Israeliness brings together two cultures, one with a long history that has a deep religious component and an ability to exist without physical territory, and the other, nascent, founded in a revolution in Jewish consciousness and in the Jewish condition. Israeli Judaism is a call for the creation of something both old and new, built on the foundation of these practices, a variety of traditions and practices that nourish Jews within Israel, and emerging from a generative conversation between the present and the past. The dash that connects Jewish with Israeli is a typographical representation, he writes, of this creative space between these two entities. I love that Yeager, one of the founders of the Shalom Hartman Institute's Be'eri program for pluralistic Jewish-Israeli identity education, and one of the founders of Beit Tfilah Yisraeli, the host of those energetic, soul-fed Kabbalat Shabbat worship services at the Namal Tel Aviv, at the port in Tel Aviv, that have now expanded to Caesarea. I love that he speaks of the dash between Jewish and Israeli as a creative space, not an interruption, not a break in meeting or a representation of something missing. Rather, a place for imagination and artistry to emerge and inform a complex identity. What would it mean for us, for all of us here, what would it mean for us to think creatively, artistically, and imaginatively about our identity as Jews? Some of us already add new items to our Seder plates, like the Kos Miriam, the glass of water to remind us of our biblical ancestors' resilience and ability to raise joy and celebration over fear, and the power of water to sustain our spirits in difficult times. Some open to learning one of the oldest known liturgical poems of our High Holy Day prayers this year at Slichot. Adonai Slichot is the center of Slichot, the anchor of our prayers of forgiveness in Sephardic communities. These words and this melody expanded our repertoire of melodies for connection at this time of year, alongside our more traditional Ashkenazi and especially historically German Habonim tunes. Many of us gathered last year to pick up garbage with One Block, working to beautify the Upper West Side and coming together to serve with friends and meet new neighbors. Expanding our practices of ritual and action keeps our heritage and our legacy alive. It challenges us to think outside of the box. It calls us to be planful and to open to new ways along with the old. As I taught several years ago when we welcomed the new year 5781 only on Zoom from the safer havens of our living rooms and dining room tables, Rav Avraham Isaac Kook, the first chief rabbi of Israel in the 20th century, taught, Hayashan yitkadesh v'achadash yitkadesh. The ancient will be made new, and the new will be made holy. These words provide an important paradigm for the ancient shall be made new. For several years now, we have reinvented how we connect with one another. We've enjoyed Shabbat dinners and Passover Seders in person and by screen. We've gathered regularly at Habonim in our virtual sanctuary to welcome the day on Tuesday mornings. We show up on Saturday evenings to say Mourner's Kaddish and welcome the new week. We show up on computers and other devices that allow us to connect with one another from across oceans and within the same building. And now, we return to our physical gathering spaces and still embrace those whose well-being requires media support. Hayashan Yitkadesh, the ancient shall be made new. Yeager goes on to say, it is important to remember that Jewish and Israeli identities are complementary, but not identical. The term Jewish-Israeli fundamentally describes a political and a cultural reality. But this term also emphasizes that the fact that there are Jews who are not Israelis are brothers and sisters across the globe. And of course, there are Israelis who are not Jewish, Muslims, Christians, and Druze, who are pieces of the fabric of the Israeli society. As part of this new project of Israeli Judaism and as Israeli Jews, we must strive to, he says, we must strive to establish positive relationships with Israelis who are not Jewish, building on the foundation of shared citizenship and equality, which derive from our democracy and no less from our Judaism and our Jewish memory. What would it mean for us to enter into conversation and relationship with those of other synagogue communities, to experience their lens and expression of Judaism alongside ours? How might we learn about who we are as citizens of God's earth and caretakers of humanity? And what would it mean for us to establish a relationship with other faithful travelers of this world, whose religious practices are not Jewish practice? How might we learn about what it means to connect to the holy? What might become illuminated about the commonalities and the differences in our prayer communities? Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel taught, to pray is to dream in league with God. How might we harness sacred dreams to benefit ourselves and our larger community? Finally, Yeager writes, this awareness also sharpens the need to cultivate the connections we have with world Jewry, building on our inherent sense of familial solidarity. I want to believe in that inherent sense of familial solidarity. I have it. Many others here have it too. So what are we doing to strengthen those connections? Now that travel is less out of reach, do we visit synagogues when we journey to other places? How do we think about Jews from and in other countries? Rabbi Gregory Kotliar serves as the rabbi of a community in Ramat Gan, just outside of Tel Aviv. Born in eastern Ukraine, his former hometown stands at the center of the fighting between Russia and the Ukraine. He speaks of his community made up of mostly immigrants from the former Soviet Union as a bridge for these immigrants, for these new Israelis, between their former lives and the world of Jewish tradition and Israeli culture. A bridge that allows for a smooth and meaningful connection between these different places without sacrificing parts of their identity. Kotliar continues, during these terribly difficult times, when war has come to our old homes and communities, we have the opportunity to live out both Zionism and the mitzvah of loving the stranger. Both call on us, he writes, to offer aid and support, attending to the material and spiritual needs of our friends and families, and to all of the immigrants and refugees who wish to enter our land. When we donate to the JDC, when we support the UJA with funds for those in Ukraine, when we pick ourselves up and sort life-saving supplies to prepare them for transport through the Afia Foundation, we do as the community members of Shirat Hagan, this Russian-speaking Israeli community, and we bring love and compassion to a broken world. These reflections of my Israeli colleagues who serve as fellows for the Honey Foundation, striving to create an Israeli society that is more open, connected, and reflective of Jewish values, brings me back to the question of whether I am and whether we are Jewish Americans or American Jews. Adjust appropriately for your self-identified nationality if we have Canadians or those from other places. Because I believe that when we live a life informed by Jewish value, Jewish narrative, Jewish culture and tradition, when our lives unfold like a beautifully woven tapestry of love and commitment, it does not really matter where we put that dash, so long as it holds the space to reflect our hopes, our yearnings, our values, our commitments, and our love and generosity for ourselves, our peoples, our community, and God's world. Commenting on the completion of the Mishkan Ohel Moed, the tabernacle of the tent of meeting that Bnei Israel did, and here's the verse from Torah, Vayasu Bnei Israel kechol asher tziva Adonai et Moshe, Kain asu. Bnei Israel came and they did this mitzvah like Moshe expected of them. Kain asu, so they did. The Or HaChaim, Rabbi Chaim Ben Attar, comes and says that makes absolutely no sense. How can you say that Bnei Israel came and built the Mishkan Ohel Moed? He says actually specifically, the verse is difficult to understand because it wasn't the children of Israel who did the work designing and crafting and constructing the tabernacle. It was Moshe and Bezalel and the skilled craft workers who did that building. So why would the Torah tell us the people completed the work when their role was to bring the materials, which they did in ways that surpassed imagination, but they didn't do the actual building? The Or HaChaim surmises that what each of us does informs, empowers, and confers merit on others. והתורה ניתנה להתקיים בכלל ישראל, כל אחד יעשה היכול להיות שבידו ויזכו זה לזה. The Torah, he says, was given to be established by the entirety of the Jewish people, each person doing what they are able to do, which brings merit for everybody else. So you show up and you do what you are called to do and what you are able to do, and everybody benefits from that because everyone is coming to bring and to do something. Meaning, we are all integrally connected, not just for ourselves, but to fulfill the raison d'etre of Torah. Torah requires us to come together, and we must live as part of a living, breathing tapestry, an ecosystem that animates Torah. The purpose of Torah and the purpose of the Jewish people is symbiotic. The text closes with the reminder that no person can fulfill all 613 mitzvot. So if somebody tells you that we have 613 mitzvot, go out there and do them all, you're off the hook. You can't. They don't all apply to every one of us. They are not available to every one of us. Because the way of Torah is bringing together disparate parts of the whole. Wherever we place or see the dash of our identity, we remain uniquely bound together because we carry the Torah, which carries us. Member of our Habonim community throughout the generations, Ellen Mendel, taught me that in German, Yom Kippur means Day of Reconciliation. May this space, and the hours ahead be restorative for our souls, be restorative for relationships with places we hold dear, and be restorative for memories that have taken hold of us. May we be blessed to find our way to at-one-ment, prepared to live in league with the holy inside and out. Gamar Chatima Tova. Ellen didn't hear that because Ellen is at the classical service. So Renee will call her and let her know. But I did tell her that what she taught me inspired my teaching. It had me thinking. And that is what is so beautiful about our community, that we actually talk to one another and we each bring our own narrative, and those narratives get woven together into something larger, something stronger, something more sacred. We continue now